to me, this is an Al Capone situation. Like
Yeah,
he may have done gambling and prostitution and bootlegging and murder and everything else, but I think we're just going to go with tax evasion, you know? So let's go with this stuff, and maybe you're going to tell me the guidelines are way more severe than it sounds under this indictment, which of course they usually
they
are.
are way, way,
Okay.
way more severe.
And,
Just
and
a foreshadowing summary.
yeah.
He's screwed.
Over 1 million Americans face sentencing every year, and it will be the most important day of their lives. But we don't fully understand the system, how broken it is, and what we can do to make it better. I'm Doug Passon. I'm a 25-year criminal defense lawyer and a sentencing expert. My goal is to bring more awareness, more fairness, and more humanity to the sentencing process. So, are you ready? Then let's get set for sentencing. Hey everybody, Doug Passon coming to you from Studio 3553 in Scottsdale, Arizona. It is Tuesday afternoon. Isn't that a song, Tuesday?
Moody Blues, one of my
Yeah.
favorite of all time.
Yeah, 4:39 p.m. Pacific time. We're coming to you because current events dictate
Yes.
Mark Allenbaugh and I getting the band back together because today, of course, the news dropped of the Trump indictment in D.C. regarding the election of 2020. And I got to say, it was nothing like what we imagined it might be when we did our Trump the Terrorist podcast a while back. But Mark and I are here to break it down and give you the perspective that you are almost certainly not going to get from all the talking heads on TV right now. Mark, I'm going to tell you, I had two titles in mind for this podcast, and tell me if anyone resonates with you. One is Everything Nowhere All at Once, and or Let's Kill All the Lawyers.
Ooh.
Because of
Oh, yeah.
there
Yep.
are six. We'll get there, but there are a lot of lawyers wrapped up in this
Yes.
indictment. Mark and I
Yes, there are.
we got the indictment. We quickly went through every little nook and cranny, and I'll just say I'm going to set this up. Like, okay, I, everything nowhere all at once, right? Because the story behind the story is told in on every page of this indictment, and it is the insurrection, the riots, the overthrow, the violence, the 1-6 is everywhere and nowhere in terms of the charges. And I'm hoping you're going to shed some light on that in terms of how this is going to kind of play itself out if there's a conviction. Of course, presumption of innocence applies. But if you look at the way the language that Jack Smith uses, his destabilizing lies to create an intense national atmosphere of mistrust and anger, that he doubles down on the violence of 1-6 to get Congress to delay the proceedings, that he's tweeting and encouraging everyone to come to DC and quoting, "We fight like hell and you're not going to have a country anymore." And, the Jack Smith's press conference today starts out with the heroes of 1-6 and the brave people who defended the Capitol. And page 39, the defendant's exploitation of the violence and chaos at the Capitol, and that he exploited. I mean, that's literally a heading of the indictment, that he exploited
Yep.
the mob for his own ends. And yet,
Yep.
these are fraud charges, and there's no insurrection, there's no seditious conspiracy, none of those things that we talked about in Elmer Stewart Rhodes and all these other 1-6 people who actually carried out the violence that this indictment says he basically summoned the mob, incited the mob, did nothing to quell the mob, and then doubled down on the mob to try to get the results that he wanted. And there's nothing there. And to me, that feels deeply unsatisfying. I'm not here to say, for vengeance, this, that, or the other, but it just seems like it's a weird sidestep in this narrative, and I'm hoping you can give your 2 cents on that.
Well, just
And,
my first global reaction to what you said, and forgive me if this sounds indelicate or rude. I don't mean to be rude, but so what? And I say so. I say so what? Because as you well know, when it comes to sentencing, the charges really don't matter. What matters are the guidelines. And the only thing that really matters with respect to the charges is what the stat max is. But
Yes.
at sentencing, as we
Yes.
well know, good and bad, everything comes in,
Well, but
and
that I think,
including
yeah.
uncharged conduct.
I know, and I knew you were going to say that, man. But doesn't that in your heart of hearts burn you to the ground? Because we spend so much time talking about the wrongheadedness of how those guidelines function. And
Yeah,
that wouldn't the world be better if a person could be charged with, proved, convicted beyond a reasonable doubt for what they actually did rather than backdoor into
right.
the guidelines with some tail
100%.
that
I,
wags the
I I
dog
hate to
fraud thing and then
I
hit him.
hate to take Trump's side on this.
Ugh.
You're
But we
exactly
don't
right.
want the guideline. We hate that the guidelines operate that way. So
Yeah.
fundamentally, it should just be killing you. Why
Yeah.
isn't it killing you, man? By the way, um, I want everyone to know this podcast is brought to you by Don Fulano. Not really, but I did have to have a little bit of tequila for this because my God, the world. We were good. By the way, we had this time blocked out to talk about the Hunter Biden plea
Yes.
hearing that went south. So I
Yeah.
hope it's not lost on anyone that we had to bump the president's son being federally indicted to talk about the former president's federal indictment. And
What
so
world do we live in?
I
What's
know,
going
man.
on? What is going on?
Don
Oh
Fulano,
my God.
the
Yes.
Don. It's all about the Don today. So let's talk about the Don. That's just my setup. So we've got, but this is the interesting thing because you and I have talked so much about the fraud guidelines, and the
Yeah.
fraud guidelines are usually based on monetary loss. But I'm not
Right.
seeing any monetary loss in here. I'm just seeing poor United States, the some
Well,
ethereal conception of the republic was defrauded in some way that caused some unspecified harm. How do you even measure that on the guidelines? I'm
well,
sure
I
you
think that's
tell
kind
me.
frankly, I think that's kind of the point of that charge isn't defraud in the monetary sense. It was to defraud the United States of its ability to have a fair and just election and
Right,
a peaceful transition of power.
right.
The fraud went to I and I think this will come out at trial because this is definitely going to trial if Trump lives that long. And by that I mean if he doesn't die of natural causes, just
Yes,
to be
or like
clear.
anxiety
Yeah, or
or
too many
cheeseburger overdose.
hamburgers, too much ketchup on his hamburgers. At any rate, so the defrauding here had to do like with the fake electors. I think all of
Yeah.
this wide conspiracy stuff is going to come out, but also part of the conspiracy charge here, and there's other conspiracy charges, or at least one other that's going to really come in at sentencing too.
Yeah.
And it's going to it allows for a roll adjustment. And I don't want to get too far
Yeah.
ahead, but I do have a guidelines
Okay.
calculation I'd like to
Well, we'll
share.
get
And
there. And
yeah,
by the way, on the subject of monetary fraud, that was another thing that was disappointed to me.
yeah,
And maybe it's a jurisdictional thing and there's a chapter yet to be written, but Trump raised millions and
yeah.
millions of dollars off of the exact fraud that they spell out in excruciating detail.
But
So,
guess what? Wait, I'm sorry to interrupt
yeah,
because I know where you're going, but he can
we
still be
getting
fined.
Simonelli?
No,
Are we talking?
Simonelli.
What do you
No,
mean?
he can be fined. He could a
Fined.
part of his
Oh,
sentence can he could still be
yeah,
fined.
but if he faced an actual monetary fraud charge, which he
Yeah.
doesn't, then the guidelines would use loss to dictate the thing, and that he's raised millions and millions of dollars, so his guidelines would be off the charts for that fraud.
Okay. Well, I'm going to give you just a quick peek into the future.
Okay,
Whatever his sentence is, it's going to be a de facto life sentence, first
I
of all.
know, I
Okay.
know.
Second of all, as to where I thought you were going with the money comment, is what I meant was he could still be disgorged of a lot of that under the fine guidelines. And I might be mistaken. I
Yeah.
don't quote me, even though I'm going to say this on your podcast. But I believe that twice he could still be fined either the greater of whatever the statutory maximum is for the fine amounts under any of these charges, and it's generally like $250,000 or something like that, or twice the pecuniary gain or loss that he caused. Twice.
Yeah. Well,
So
that's a whole big can of worms.
but it's a big
Because
can of worms,
it's
but
a
he gets
jump
to,
to say he got pecuniary gain off it because there's nowhere in the indictment, and then you have to
it doesn't have to
determine
be
what the
indicted.
loss is. I
Does not
know, but
have to be.
and this is the thing. This is not about me hoping Trump spends the rest of his life in jail. This is
Mhm.
about we talk about accountability and being held accountable for what you've done.
Mhm.
And this indictment is like a first little step, but I just don't think it even touches the truth of his culpability, alleged culpability. But whatever. Maybe
Well,
you're
but
me
hey,
the
so here
guidelines
finally,
and maybe
finally, maybe
yeah,
okay. So I'm sorry to interrupt again, but
yeah,
maybe Trump. I mean, he's been out there acting as Cheeto Jesus and saying that they're just indicting me because they're trying to get after you
yeah,
being his, core followers and all this stuff,
yeah,
and that he wants to make America great again. But here's the ironic thing: everybody's going to watch very closely how all these cases, at least the federal ones, develop,
yeah,
and they're going to watch how the sentence or the trial and whatnot. But most importantly, really the sentencing, because that's where the rubber meets the road.
yeah,
And what ironically Trump may bring to all of this through his sacrifice is a better understanding of how absurd our federal sentencing, and really all sentencing in the states,
yeah,
but primarily how absurd and wrongheaded and
yeah.
unfair, and all the due process that is lacked in sentencing. And
Well,
maybe that
I
will
like
bring a
that.
change.
That's a
Even
silver lining.
it is a silver line. Even, as bad as he is, and as much as most of us want to see him go away forever and all this stuff. But you're right. We want him to go away, and we want him to be disgorged of all his ill-gotten gains. We want it done in a system that's fair and just, so there is no question about what
Yeah,
happened and why.
yeah, yeah,
But I could tell you
yeah,
just the way it was charged. I mean, there's gamesmanship here that's going on with the way it's charged. It's not going to make any difference with respect to the sentence that's ultimately imposed. But I think the reason why they didn't charge seditious conspiracy, and they can always, bring a superseding charge if they wanted to. One of the things here might be a gamesmanship, like to get them to plead out before they bring in, a superseding indictment. That could
yeah,
be.
yeah. They
Um,
could definitely come back with an
and that could,
They
because
just did that in Florida, so of course, yeah. I mean,
bingo. So
this
that, I
could
mean,
be
that could
chapter
happen
the
here.
first chapter,
Right, exactly. So this is,
and
and
there may be a
we've been involved.
jurisdictional.
We've been
Sorry.
involved in cases with superseding indictments, and
Oh yeah,
sometimes
all
there's
the
a
time.
third superseding indictment and a
Yeah.
fourth superseding indictment. So
Yes. Yes.
that,
Yes.
this is not the end of the story necessarily,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
also
Well, that's
there's this,
another silver lining.
right. There's another silver lining, but the super the seditious conspiracy charge. Remember, I think the stat max on that was only like 10 years or something like that. But regardless of what it was, there, and this is listening to some of the other talking heads early on about this in the last hour, is that Jack Smith may have decided not to bring that charge because Trump is going to argue First Amendment grounds. He was
Yeah.
saying this, he was saying that, and he really thought that he had won the election, and so
Yeah.
he really wasn't out there, like a Stuart Rhodes, or literally organizing people to storm the Capitol and getting gear and all this other stuff. So,
But
in that
if that's
regard,
the case, then I mean, well, I don't know because that's an issue in the fraud in this indictment too. That he may have believed that there was fraud. I don't believe he believed it, but the point is, you don't get to do deliberate, ignorance of the facts, and you don't get to just
right,
pick and
whether, yeah,
choose.
willful
So
blindness is not a
willful blindness.
defense. And I think Jack
Yeah,
does a really good job, Jack Smith, the special prosecutor here,
yeah,
and in the indictment, showing, look, Trump clearly knew he lost
yeah,
with
yeah,
all the
yeah.
interchange and all the quotes and everything, what
Oh yeah,
everybody.
he cites 8 different categories
Yeah,
of trusted cadres of
Yeah,
advisors who have been advising him all through his presidency he's
right.
relied on that it said
Yes.
no, 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 no. And
Yes.
then the dipshits Sidney Powell and fucking Rudy Giuliani say, okay. And then he's all in for that. But
Yeah.
anyway, well, I want to know the guy because to me, this is an Al Capone situation. Like
Yeah.
he may have done gambling and prostitution and bootlegging and murder and everything else, but I think we're just going to go with tax evasion, you know? So let's go with this stuff, and maybe you're going to tell me the guidelines are way more severe than it sounds under this indictment, which of course they usually
They
are.
are way, way,
Okay.
way more
And then
severe.
we're gonna hopefully we could talk about the terrorism enhancement. I don't know if
Oh,
that comes
yes,
into
we
play.
are going to talk
Okay, all
about
right,
that
good.
terrorism enhancement.
Now
He's so
and,
here, just
and
a foreshadowing summary.
yeah.
He's screwed.
Okay, that's a legal term.
Yes.
Um, I love that your glass, my glass is always half empty, and your glass is always full. And of course, at this very moment, my glass is totally empty. So just one second, one
So is
moment.
mine, damn it.
Just need a little sip of Don Fulano. And I will say this, you know, I always love to talk about the storytelling, the narrative, the writing, the advocacy there. And I will
Yeah.
say, Jack Smith gets very high marks. There's one point we'll talk about later that I think is bad and stupid in this indictment. But on
Okay.
the whole, we say start with a bang, right? And I just, for those of you who will never read the indictment, I'm going to read you the first 5 lines because it tells a story. And we don't see this in indictment all the time, but he is here to tell the American people a story. And he said in his press conference, like he did the last time, I want every one of you to read this. And it says, Donald J. Trump, the defendant, was the 45th president of the United States and a candidate for re-election in 2020. Period. The defendant lost the 2020 presidential election. Period. That's the whole first paragraph. But that's comes right out of the gate. And then the second one just ups the ante.
Yeah.
So you always say, "What's the problem?" Then there's a bigger problem. Despite having lost, the defendant was determined to remain in power. So for more than 2 months following election day, the defendant spread lies that there had been outcome determinative fraud in the election, that he had actually won. These claims were false. The defendant knew they were false, period. But the defendant repeatedly and widely disseminated them anyway to make his knowingly false claims appear legitimate, create an intense national atmosphere of mistrust and anger, and erode public faith in the administration of the election. Bam. So that sets the stage for the whole story he's going to tell. And I say, that's good. That is good writing.
Yeah.
I give it good marks.
Nice hook. Nice
All
hook.
right. So is it time to break this down? We have
so we're going to break
counts,
this down.
Right.
So we have 4 counts. So we have the 371 count. That's a 5-year stat max. It's not the most serious of the counts.
That's conspiracy to defraud the United States.
Yes.
Does that mean we're all victims? I'm a victim.
We're all victims. We're all victims.
Do I get victims' rights? Do I get to be heard? Do I get to make a statement at sentencing because I'm a victim?
That's a good question.
Okay, cool. I'm going to get that ready.
Yes. So we should all get our letters ready, and we'll see when sentencing is.
We always talk about submitting too many letters. I could see the prosecutor submitting like 40 million letters. Okay.
Yeah. Or a petition from,
that's
change.org. They'll probably have some petitions or something there. So the 1512, there's 2 counts for 1512, obstruction of justice or conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding. These are the most serious counts because they each can carry a 20-year stat max.
Oh, okay.
They're the most serious counts in terms of the statutory maximum.
Gotcha.
But the count that really screws them is the last one. And it does, even though it only is a 10-year stat max.
And this is 18 USC 241.
18 USC.
This is the one that's like kind of really old, like Civil War old, right?
Yes.
To deprive you of your voting rights.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And this is the one that
there's a guideline for that?
There is a guideline for that. There's actually 3 or 4 guidelines for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do the guidelines say?
2H1
door number 1, Mark.
Let's go. Yes, let's go look at door number 1.
And by the way, I don't mean to be so glib and gleeful. This is not really a happy moment in our history, but
Well, I
we have
disagree
to
with I no, I don't think that we need to be so
somber.
uh that we I think this is a good time in our democracy because it is proof that our democracy works. It is
Yes.
testing it. We went to the edge. We almost had a civil war. We almost had a dictator. And now we're holding this guy who has never been accountable for jack shit in his entire life. We are
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
collectively holding him accountable, and the
Yeah.
system is working. And for me, this is the part in the movie where you stand up and you cheer. I
Yeah.
mean, this is
Okay.
good. I think I know people say, "Oh, this is terrible," and this has happened to a president and all that other stuff. It's not.
Okay.
No, it's not, because it's
Yeah.
happened to other democracies and other
Yeah.
non-democracies too.
Yeah.
And and this is something to be celebrated, that we are not
Oh,
going to fall down into the
once again,
black hole of
oh, look at
some
you. Once
type of
again
type.
with your silver lining and your
Yeah,
optimism.
yeah.
This is like Paul and John, It's very good. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So, what
That
was
was
I
a
looking?
Beatles reference, by the way.
Oh,
Paul was
thank you.
the uplifting one. That was you. And
Yes.
John was the very dark, depressed one. That was me.
Yeah, but he wrote better lyrics.
Well, they complement each other. Like
Yes, they
and
do.
the quintessential example is fixing a hole. When
Ah,
when Paul says, "I have to admit it's getting better. It's getting better all the time." And what does John say? Can't get much worse. Yeah. Anyway.
very good.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I was
I'm
thinking
gonna
of
put the
also
John Filano
Ebony and
aside.
Ivory too, but that's not Paul and John. That's Paul and
That's Paul
Stevie,
and
Stevie Wonder.
yeah, yeah, Stevie. I was thinking about Paul and Michael, which was Say, Say, Say.
Oh yeah. Well,
Remember
that was a
that?
good one too. Yes, I do remember that one. So I'm just let me get
Boy.
the just getting the
I'll have to
guidelines
just
up here.
decide whether to edit that whole digression out, but
Oh no, that part that's good. That's good digression.
that's what makes
It's
this
it's it's
that's
entertaining.
that's what makes this gold, man.
Yes, it is.
Podcast gold.
Okay, so 2H 1.1. This is where 18 USC 241 goes. And for all of you guidelines nerds out there, don't forget to look at the bottom of the guidelines and the statutory provisions that will tell you, what the main statutes, not necessarily all of them, but what the main
Yeah.
statutes are covered by the
And I
particular
guess I do
guidelines.
have to do a quick remedial for people who are just tuning in the first time. Mark told us about the statutory max, which means the what the law says the maximum can be, but within that 0 to 5 or 0 to 10 or 0 to 20 range, these sentencing guidelines give advice to the judge about what the sentence should actually be, and the judge is typically free to follow or ignore the advice
Mhm.
and give them higher or lower, but they always start with these guidelines. And so that's why we have to talk about them. So back to you.
Yep. Okay, so this is 2H 1.1, offenses involving individual rights, such as voting. So this is the primary guideline that 241, 18 USC 241, the fourth count, applies to. So here, what's really interesting, it talks about, you start out with the base offense level with any guideline. You start out with the base offense level, just the base, and then you'll have additional sentencing factors or specific offense characteristics, is what the
Yeah.
commission calls them, and you add those to the base
Yep.
offense level to get the final total
Yep.
offense level. So
Good.
here, the base offense level is one of six things, whichever is the highest. It's either the offense level from the offense guideline applicable to any underlying offense, or 12 or 10, blah, 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 blah. But it's this one that's going to be the operative factor here. So the offense level from the offense guideline applicable to any underlying offense. Well, what's the underlying offense to the offense involving our individual rights and the right to vote and all that stuff? It's the obstruction. It's
Oh,
the obstruction. So
I
we go
was
to the
hoping you'd
obstruct.
say seditious conspiracy, but go
Well,
ahead.
no, we go to this obstruction. But remember, there have been, I think, close to 1,000, if not over 1,000 individuals now that have been prosecuted for January 6th.
Yeah.
Maybe close to 1,000, not over 1,000. And most of them have been sentenced under this guideline. even before the seditious conspiracy and stuff. Because remember what we talked about, seditious conspiracy, there is no guideline for it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but at
Oh,
any
so
rate, so
this is the common guideline that
this
they've
is
all
the
been
common
sentencing.
guideline.
Okay.
Most people are getting
All right.
sentenced under this guideline.
Okay.
So this is the obstruction guideline. You start with the 14. So we total all this up. So now I'm going to go to something, just an ugly
And I guess the
spreadsheet.
remedial takeaway too is when we talk about these numbers, 14 and things like that,
Yeah,
that's not time in prison or anything. It's just a
right.
number that correlates to a chart in the back of the guidelines book that then corresponds to a range of in term of range of imprisonment. So we're getting there, but we need to figure out what the offense level is first. That's what
Correct.
we're doing now. Okay.
So this is way into baseball, and excuse me for making this ugly and not my normal
All
beautiful
right.
chart, but
That's
I didn't
cool.
really have time.
We doing this on the fly. So
Yep.
it's a nice
Let me-
hats off to this is a little commercial for Microsoft Excel. Go ahead.
Yes, make it a little bit bigger here so it might be easier to see. Okay, so like I said, we first start off with 2H 1.1 and we go to the base offense level that for the underlying offense. And what we
Mm-hmm.
said the underlying offense is, did I spell it
So
correctly? No, I
it's
didn't spell it correctly, but it's
under
2J 1.2,
it's an
which is the
underling.
obstruction guideline.
Yes, okay.
The underling offense, yes. So the base offense level there is 14. He's
Yeah.
going to get a +8 because physical injury was involved in the offense. It doesn't matter that he didn't physically injure anybody, but the offense conduct, if that resulted in the physical injury or intimidation or harassment of anybody, then he's going to get a
Mm, okay.
and I think that's clearly going to apply because it's
That
applied.
might that
It's
might
applied.
explain why that's all over the indictment is the
Yeah. Yes.
the chaos and carnage of 1/6 is everywhere in this indictment. But
Right. And a lot of the J6 defendants have also been hit with this,
okay.
even those that did not throw the the fire extinguisher or hit the cops with the flag, just that
Okay.
they were there and in proximity,
Yeah.
they got hit with this too. So
Okay.
then there's substantial interference with the administration of justice, which again, many, if not most, the J6 defendants have been hit with this. He's going to
Seems
get this too.
duplicative given that you've just got a enhancement for the underlying offense of obstruction because substantial interference with administration of justice sounds just like obstruction, but okay.
But that's what's there. They got that. It's
Okay.
there.
All
So
right.
he's going to get hit with that. He's probably going to get hit also with a +2 for the fabrication of documents and or extensive planning. Obviously, this took a lot of planning. They were planning this, I think, all the way back in October. Even before the vote,
Oh yeah.
the election at night. So, and then the fabrication of documents, of course, would go to all the fake electors and
By the
stuff that they
way,
were
on
trying to pass off.
extensive planning, who sorry to interrupt, unindicted co-conspirator 6 is somebody who was helping to manage this whole endeavor. And
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, who do you think that is? My money's on Steve Bannon or Roger Stone. Maybe
Ooh.
that's just wishful thinking. But
Ooh.
they
Yeah.
were holed up in that hotel
Yeah. Yeah.
in during 1/6, and I don't know. Anyway,
Yeah. It's not going to be a surprise person, that's for sure. It's not going to be somebody we haven't heard of. Okay.
okay,
So now that once you finish all of 2J 1.2, so that finishes all the specific offense characteristics that you would have under the obstruction guideline. So
okay,
now you come
that's a
back
lot.
now you come back to 2H 1.1, and there's only one other specific offense characteristic, public official. And Trump is the
So
public
if you
official
are
par excellence.
if the defendant is a public official,
Yes,
you get a 6 level bump. Yeah. Yeah,
bingo. I can't
there's
think
never
of
been a
more
more
public
public
official.
official in the
Yes,
history of American criminal jurisprudence than the
correct,
former president of the United States. That's a
correct.
6 level.
So
Holy
that's easy.
shit.
That's
Okay.
easy. Okay, so now remember all that conspiracy stuff? This is
Yeah.
what's going to screw him. So it's a conspiracy, and you have to have at least 5 other people or otherwise extensive. Well, the 5 other people that are that are criminally responsible, we got 6 in this indictment that's mentioned. 6
Mhm.
others. So, and clearly there's a lot more than that. So,
Sure.
he's going to get a leader, and he was, he oversaw all of this because what was he called?
Well, he's literally the
He was the
leader of the
president
free
of the
world.
United States. Yes.
The leader of the free world. The word leader is right there in the
Yes, right there. So
yeah.
that's it. So he's going to
Okay.
get that.
Oh my.
And
Oh
he
my.
kind of
That's another
abused,
4.
yeah, that's another 4. And then he kind of abused the public trust
Oh, you think?
a wee bit, just a wee bit.
Oh my. Yeah,
So
that
there's
is
another 2.
yeah.
And then he got he's going to get an obstruction of justice, an additional 2. Yes, he's being how's that not double counting and all
It's
this
like
other stuff.
triple counting at this point.
Well, no, it's not because this has to go with his cover up and witness intimidation.
Well, has he done that in this case? I know he's done it in every other case.
He's done it in this case. He was
Well,
that's
yeah,
part
in
of
the 1-6 in the congressional hearings, there was evidence that came out about that. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So
Oh,
that's
oh
and he
boy,
doesn't. By the way, again,
dude.
it's not that he had to do it. It's just that the offense conduct
Uh-huh.
involved that.
Uh-huh.
So there's greater conspiracy and all of that.
Mhm.
He's going to get hit with that. And if anyone thinks that's unfair, well, welcome to the United States. Welcome to federal
That's
sentencing
right. If you don't
because
like
this
it,
is what
then
happens.
you send
Yeah.
a nice letter to the United States Sentencing Commission. They need to
Yeah.
deal with relevant conduct, uncharged conduct, and who knows, maybe even acquitted conduct in
Oh,
this
by the way, their
case.
next public meeting is on August 24th, the day before
Oh,
my birthday.
oh, nice.
Yeah.
Happy
So
birthday
thank you.
early.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Okay, so
we've
he's going to get that. So
gotten another
now
2. What's the total offense level?
that's all of it, all added up. All of
Holy
these numbers
shit,
added up.
dude.
He's at a 41.
Okay, there's only 42 on the chart,
43.
right?
There's only
Oh, so
43.
43 on the
Yes.
oh boy.
Yeah.
This is the worst of the worst, like of all his cases
Oh,
so
but it gets
far.
worse. It gets
Oh,
worse. It gets worse
okay.
because I am certain that Jack is going to go after 3A 1.4 Note 4.
Oh boy.
3A 1.4 is the terrorism adjustment, the terrorism
Oh
enhancement,
yes, we've talked
which
about
I
this
happen to know a
in
little bit
past.
about because I
Yeah.
actually was on the terrorism team just right after 9/11 at the
Uh-huh.
Sentencing Commission. Did a lot
Wow.
of work on this particular enhancement.
Mm-hmm.
And Note 4 says in application Note 4 in 3A 1.1, 3A 1.4, and we're going to set aside Kaiser and Wilkie and all that other stuff. But
Yes.
setting all that aside, it says that if this doesn't technically apply because the way that guideline applies to the terrorism enhancement, which gives you a bump of 12
Oh,
and puts you in criminal history 6, it is the most onerous of all the specific offender characteristics, all the sentencing adjustments. It is the
okay.
worst of the worst in the guidelines. And so you get a bump of 12 and criminal history category of 6. And if you're less than a 32, it bumps you up to a 32. So let's say you start at a 12, 12 plus 12 is 24. Well, that's under 32. You go up to a 32, no matter what. So at any rate, obviously,
Okay.
Trump's way above here. So that particular guideline, it only applies to certain statutory offenses, and
Uh-huh.
none of these are those statutory offenses. So it says in those cases where there was still political motivation involved in the offense conduct, which is the definition of terrorism that the commission uses in the guidelines, but the particular offenses of conviction aren't technically what are called federal crimes of terrorism. You can
Yeah.
still move for an upward departure.
Interesting. And as you
And
pointed out in prior podcasts,
yes,
every single one of the January
exactly.
6th had terrorism enhancement potential built into
Yes,
their plea agreement. They didn't always
yes.
invoke it, but it was always at the tip of the
It was always there.
top of
It was always,
mind for
yes,
them. And
yes.
if he doesn't get it, then nobody should get, I mean,
Right, exactly. If
arguably,
he doesn't, so I
arguably.
mean, so
Yeah.
what his total statutory maximum is under all the 4 offenses of conviction. And again, this is just for this case. This has nothing to do with what's going on in Florida, nothing to
Mm,
do with what's going on up in New York,
New York.
nothing to do with what's going to happen in Georgia.
All right.
But
Which
here
could
in
happen any day.
correct.
We're probably gonna have to get a Georgia state law person in for that.
Oh, okay,
Um,
so 55 years is
50,
the maximum the judge, I can't remember the judge's name here in the DC District Court who this was assigned to, but at any rate, this particular judge can sentence up to a maximum of 55 years. Now, Trump isn't going to get anywhere close to that. And frankly, if I was on his defense team, I would point this out. I don't know if you can see that.
Judge Tanya Chutkan.
Okay. We'll have to look into
the Tanya S. Chutkan, who the talking heads say is extraordinary for both sides. Very fair, very even-handed, very smart,
right.
good judge.
Right.
So,
well, this is one of the things that we had spoken about before.
Oh yeah, we're doing
Trump's
life expectancy.
76 and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah, and his life expectancy, as we've discussed many times, an inmate can expect to lose on average 2 years of life expectancy for every year of incarceration. Assuming he's incarcerated now, this year, he'd be lucky to make it a little past 2026, and he probably won't even make it 4 years in prison. The point is, any sentence that would require him to serve more than 4 years is likely a de facto life sentence.
Yeah.
But let's go back for a second.
And for those of you who haven't been listening to, we're over 60 episodes now, but we talk about life expectancy a lot. And if you ever unfortunately find yourself in this situation that you're facing time, this is an important element of what you need to argue before the judge, especially if you're, over the age of 50 or whatever, because the life expectancy analysis that people sometimes do in federal court is wrong, because it doesn't take into account the Patterson study and the research that says it's a whole different calculation. So that's, I guess, a plug for Mark Allenbaugh on sentencingstats.com, because he does this analysis with cool charts, and we just saw them. So if you're not if you're not watching the podcast on the YouTubes, just know there was a very cool chart with graphics.
Well, I got another cool chart coming up here in a second.
Okay.
So this is, again, what we're looking at now is this total offense level down here of 41. According to Jason,
we have a podcast on that too.
We have a podcast on that.
It's judicial sentencing information. It's a database that any public person can access.
Correct.
Go ahead.
But it's kind of high level. There's still bugs in it too. This is something that the commission created. But at any rate, what it spit out, there isn't enough data to show what somebody sentenced under either 2H1.1 or 2J1.2 with a total offense level of 41 and criminal history 1. There's not enough data to analyze what the average sentence would be and all this other stuff. So I just went to another, in my professional estimation, would be a close enough guideline, and that was 2B1.1, and it had data. That's the fraud guideline. So if we look under the fraud guideline for those that were offense level 41, criminal history 1, the average sentence was only 163 months only, and the median was 168 months, and there was 19 individuals that met that. But that's still, even at that, he's still going to be way over his life expectancy. But one more. So here's I
have to think while you do that for all of the bluster from the former president about, I welcome this, I'm doing this for you, it's a badge of honor, I have to believe that this evening in Mar-a-Lago or Bedminster, wherever he's sitting, that there's a really deep, dark pit of doom and dread in his stomach.
Well, wait until he watches this podcast.
With this one especially. Because this is number 3, as you said, but this one seems bad. This one seems, this is the real deal. Okay. Okay, so you've got another chart up here, your little box. Do you call that a box and whiskers chart?
Box and whiskers, or a box plot. This is what the commission and really statisticians generally use to illustrate the distribution of data. When you talk about just the average or the median for any particular data set, that doesn't really give you a flavor for how wide the data are spread across and whatnot. So when you say like the average sentence is 100 months, does that mean that most sentences or all of them are at 100 months or very close to it? No, not necessarily. They could be spread out quite a bit or they
Yeah.
could be clustered around there. So, and that's what's more informative to a judge, rather than saying what the average is also showing the cluster around the average and the median, so the judge can get a better feel of where sentences are happening typically. And so what I did here, like I said before, under 2H 1.1 or 2J 1.2, there were not enough data to illustrate what the sentencing distribution would be for somebody with a offense level, total offense level 41 in criminal history 1. So
Yeah.
what I did is I went back for the last 5 fiscal years, 2018 through 2022, which is the latest available. And regardless of guideline, I looked at all of those that had a total offense level of 41, a criminal history category 1, that did not receive, importantly, a government departure or a government motion for downward departure for cooperation or a 5K. That's why I have no 5K in here. So that's very important to weed those out, because that could
Yeah.
artificially deflate things. But also no mandatory minimum. I said no man, I meant no mandatory minimum, because that could artificially increase
Yeah.
the data.
Right.
So, and Trump, none of the counts in the indictment carry a mandatory minimum. So that's why I eliminated those. So over the past 5 fiscal years, there were 80 defendants that matched this sentencing profile. And again, they could have any type of guideline, from 2D 1.1 to 2B, which is the drugs, to the fraud guideline, to child porn, all over the place. But this is where the sentences came down. And so the median was 168 months, which I think is around 14 years. The average here at the X in the middle of the box was 182.6 months. But most of them received between 96 and 240 months. This is the first quartile and the third quartile, which means half. So half of these 80 cases, or 40 of them, ranged from 96 to 240 months. And the rest were either down, we had sentences all the way down to probation, all the way up to life. By the way, 470 is a magic number in commission data files.
Yeah.
470 means life imprisonment, because they can't say life. They have to
Yeah.
give it some kind of value. And so 470, for whatever reason, is what they
Right.
chose. So some of these individuals actually received life. Trump can't receive life, and actually he cannot be sentenced to life, because
Yeah.
there is no statute of conviction that carries that. But he
Yeah.
can be sentenced up to 55 years.
Yeah, because they can, if the guidelines are higher, they can stack the stat maxes for
Yeah,
each
they
of
can set
them.
exactly.
But so your box chart says basically in the zone, the
Yeah.
bottom end of that zone is 8 years.
Yes.
The top end of that zone is 20 years.
Correct. Correct.
And life expectancy was what?
4 years.
4 years. So yeah. Okay.
So
Well,
so yeah.
that's serious business.
Yeah.
I gotta ask you, do you just have, this is a little of an aside, but do you have any thoughts about why these unindicted co-conspirators are not indicted and they're not part of this indictment?
Well,
Not
th-
named in the indictment?
one thing could be that they are negotiating cooperation agreements.
Yeah.
There may be a tactical reason why they just want to try Trump alone, so they don't have to worry about severance. If they tried them all together, they'd all be pointing fingers at each other, because a
Yeah.
lot of these attorneys, or a lot of the co-defendants, potential co-defendants, were his attorneys, and so he's going to rely on an advice of counsel defense. Well, my attorney said it was okay. Well,
Yeah.
if they're all in the same indictment, in the same courtroom, the attorneys are going to say, no, that's not what I told him. I told him just the opposite. Da, da, da,
Yeah.
da. So that's probably,
Yeah.
I think that's really why, is that they just wanted to avoid all of that
Yeah. That makes
severance
sense.
issue.
And it may be that's a tactic, like you said, to get cooperation. To
Yeah,
say, look, Rudy, you know damn well when you read this indictment who co-conspirator number one is.
right.
So this is your last chance
Yeah.
to come on in. But I don't know if they think Rudy would be a credible witness against the Don or not. I don't know, but should be interesting.
And by the way, if he was to plead guilty, which he's not going to, and the reason why he's not going to plead guilty is he's only going to get 3 levels off and that's not going to help him in
Yeah.
terms of what his ultimate sentence is going to be.
Well, he'd
He
have
would.
to get a 5K. I mean, he'd have to get some serious downward
Oh,
pressure.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I meant Trump. I meant Trump.
Oh, Trump. Oh,
Yeah.
I thought
Yeah.
we were talking about Rudy.
Oh, no, 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 no. No, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, Trump will never plead guilty.
Yeah, he can't.
He
And he's
can't
got,
because
and by the way, the only way a plea ever makes sense to him is if it's encompasses all of the pending
yeah,
charges everywhere.
it would have to
Which
be a global plea,
global plea to say,
and it would have to be a global C plea.
oh, we're gonna talk about that with Hunter Biden.
Yeah,
Maybe.
we are, but I'll
Oh
just get. I'll
God.
just. I won't go
C
into that,
plea
but I'll
means
just.
a stipulated,
Yeah,
meaning that ties the judge's hands. They either have to follow whatever the agreement is, or they have to
right.
reject the plea, and then Trump can exercise his right to
Yeah,
trial.
that would be the only way I could see him pleading is a global resolution C plea to probation and no fine or very little fine or something like that. Something that's not going to bankrupt him. And yeah, that's it. That's what and it would have to bind the states somehow. So there would have to be, whatever states are looking to. It's certainly New York and Georgia, but there might be others
Yeah.
like New Jersey,
Yeah.
um, and Florida. Although I don't see Florida state prosecuting him, but who knows?
I would love, I mean, I don't want to, love is not the right word because I still like, I have mixed emotions about this. But in terms of the fraud cases, you and I have seen monetary fraud cases for so much less than
Mm,
this blatant lying to get money out of his
yeah,
supporters. And I think just from a very storytelling, from a narrative standpoint, it's very important somewhere to file these fraud charges to make sure that the Trump followers, bless your heart, like I'm not faulting you for getting sucked into the vortex of Trump, but you need to understand that you've been duped, that he's been knowingly, look, knowingly is all over this indictment. He's been knowingly lying to you to
hmm,
get you to give him money, but you probably don't always have lots of spare money to give, but you so believe the lie that you're willing to give money to him. So that is fraud, quintessentially, in my
yeah,
opinion. And we're talking to the tune of millions, tens of millions of dollars,
mm,
maybe hundreds of millions of dollars. And by
yeah,
the way, he's spending all that fucking money on legal fees. So
yes.
there's a story that needs to be told for a good chunk of his constituency that I'm sorry to say you've been duped. And I'm sad that that's not here because that's an important part of this narrative. Now maybe it's jurisdictional, maybe that we'll see that somewhere else. I don't know, but I do know that fraud is all over this, and lies about the election is all over the indictment, and he used those lies to raise tens of millions of dollars. So where
Yes.
is the fraud charge built around that? I really, really hope we see it.
Well,
And
I mean, that could come in, in another case, and but I just come back to we started the podcast with this, and I'm just want to confirm for your viewers and listeners, 18 USC 3571, which covers fines,
mhm,
subsection D states that if any person derives pecuniary gain
yeah,
from the offense, or if the offense results in pecuniary loss to a
yeah.
person other than the defendant may be fined not more than the greater of twice the twice the gross gain or twice the gross loss.
Well, I'm
So,
with you in terms of the consequence to
yeah,
Trump,
yes.
but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the story. I need the public to understand the truth of what's happening here. And if we go backdoor it through those
But that can
fines and
come
everything
through.
else,
But we're
nah,
talking about the same thing,
the
though. I think
general,
that
I know, but the general public's not paying that much attention to say, oh, I see that he's been fined because he raised money off of this. And therefore, no, that's I don't have that much faith in the nuance. The general public is going to be able to grasp the nuance of that whole the legal intricacies of the fine provisions of the United States
you don't
sentencing.
think Jack will bring that out at sentencing and spend a whole
I don't
day.
know.
Well,
I
he
don't
could
know,
see
man.
look, most people
At
at the
that
federal
t-
level.
at that point, the people who need to know will be tuned out because all this is political fake news anyway. By the time we get to that stuff,
But
I
I'm
don't
the
know.
people that need to know. You're the
But you
people that need to
already
know.
know. You
Yeah,
already
I
know.
know,
You're paying attention.
but we yes, but we're the but we're the people that care, about democracy, and we should but we are the people. It's not his followers per se, because there's nothing anybody can do or
I
say
know.
that's going to
This is where
convince them.
my glass is half full. I still have faith that if they see the story well told, that the truth might penetrate,
Well, see,
might permeate.
look, your problem, Doug, and all due respect, is that you've never been to Cleveland, so you're not a Browns fan. So
Dude,
that
I grew up in Indiana.
well, I mean, you weren't a Browns fan then either.
What
I
a
live
well,
around Browns fans,
okay.
and nothing, no evidence about how awful they are ever changes their mind. I'm gonna probably get assaulted when I get home now, but
So there's rah rah Browns no
they're
matter
rah rah
what,
Browns no matter what.
no
It
matter
doesn't
what.
matter. It doesn't matter what anybody says. It doesn't matter
Oh
who's injured.
God.
It doesn't matter what happens on the field. They're
Well,
the best
I've
team in the
often
world.
thought about starting a some kind of a nonprofit called the Brown Cow Society, because there
Yeah.
was this survey that was taken several years back about asking the general public where does chocolate milk come from brown cows, and a
I heard about this.
surprising percentage of people believe that that is
Chocolate
true.
cows. Yeah. Chocolate
So
cows.
I want to see the Browns versus brown cow overlap to see. I want to test the Browns fans to see if they think that chocolate milk comes from brown cows. Can I just
Well,
point out one last thing in the indictment? Because I
yeah.
mentioned earlier there was one thing as I read this that, you know, Jack Smith has a huge job and he went a very long way to make this bulletproof, to tell a really unimpeachable story with great facts and great detail. And there was one point that stood out to me, and it made me scratch my head and go, "What the fuck is he doing?" And it
Hmm.
was page 40, paragraph 114. So
Okay.
he's going all through this indictment. He's talking about lies, 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 and basically made the case that Trump's a liar. Newsflash. Put that on the
Hmm.
Chiron. Donald
Yeah.
Trump has engaged in the telling of falsehoods.
Okay. So
Um,
we're here.
yeah, and he talks about the tweets, and he made an assertion that is just fundamentally flawed on its face, I think. And why? Why would you do this? So he says he did these tweets. He did not ask rioters to leave the Capitol. That's right, but instead falsely suggested that the crowd at the Capitol was being peaceful.
Hmm.
And then he includes two examples of tweets, which was, "Please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They're truly on the side of our country. Stay peaceful."
Hmm.
That doesn't suggest that they were being peaceful necessarily.
Well, stay peaceful. I mean, I could say,
there's a lot of wiggle room to say,
sure.
"I know you guys are getting a little squirrely out there. Knock it off."
Hmm.
That, to me, if I'm Trump, that's a perfectly reasonable interpretation of that tweet. That's
Hmm.
a stretch. That's all I'm saying. This is a
Yeah.
stretch. And then the next one is that I'm at 3:13, he tweets, "I'm asking for everyone at the US Capitol to remain peaceful. No violence, exclamation point. Remember, we are the party of law and order, respect the law, and our great men and women in blue, thank you."
Mhm.
That's not, I don't have to interpret that as him suggesting that everyone's being nice and peaceful. I get to read that just as much, if not more so, as him saying, "I know shit's popping off. You need to stop." And the point is, why? Why does he put this? Because when you're telling a story, anytime you run into a bump in the road that just doesn't feel good, you start to like detach from the story because you think, that doesn't feel right, you know? And if you're going to put something in there that's open to interpret, that's to me not at all black and white, you better have a really good reason for it. And to me, there's no reason to even have that. And what happens is, what the naysayers will do. They will glom onto one little thing in this indictment and use that to blow it up and say, "Don't you see this whole thing as like a bunch of lies and exaggerations and interpret false news? This is fake news, what they're doing." And when Henry Lee was on the stand at the OJ trial, when he was talking about some of the bad evidence, he said, if you're eating a bowl of spaghetti and you come across a cockroach, you don't keep eating, you throw the whole bowl out.
Mhm.
And this to me is a rookie. I thought that was a rookie mistake. Why would you give the opposition any ammunition to say that he's stretching? He's
Well,
he I
okay.
don't understand that part. And I
This
know
is a
I'm looking at this like a little nitty what do you call it? Ticky tacky, but to me that was like a giant flashing neon sign saying dumb, dumb, dumb. That was dumb. Jack Smith, I'm gonna give you at least an A minus, if not a B plus for this indictment as a whole, but why did you do that? Why?
well, so this is a very odd day for me because I've already caught myself defending Trump, and now I am going to defend a prosecutor.
Oh my God. Did you
Oh
break out
yes,
in
this is
hives?
so weird. What's happened? I feel like was that Mr. Mixel Pixel or whatever in Superman, the old
Yeah.
Superman comics. He was like lived in a reverse world. At any rate, what I think Jack is doing here is stealing Trump's thunder because these tweets, and I think there's a couple of others, he has always touted as, "See, look, I was trying to quell the riot. I wasn't inspiring the riot or inflaming the rioters to do anything and what have you. I
Yeah.
did, but he, of course, he's cherry picking all of that stuff. And
Yeah.
so out of all of his other tweets and all of his statements about, we got to fight like hell and da 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 da, he just gloms onto
Well,
it's only a couple of tweets, and maybe these are all of them, or if there's more, there's maybe
yeah.
two or three others. But that, I think what Jack's doing here is stealing his thunder. He knows what
Mm,
Trump's going to do with these tweets. He knows, look, here's evidence, but it's very selective, and I think there is another way to read these. I understand the way you're reading them,
yeah.
but I think what he's talking about is the first tweet,
Yeah.
and he says, "Stay peaceful."
Wow.
They're not peaceful already. There's nothing to stay. That suggests
Yeah.
that they are peaceful to remain that way. They weren't. And the
Yeah.
same thing with the second one
Right.
is remain peaceful. They were
Right.
not peaceful at all.
It's like if I said stay gold, pony boy, that would
Yeah.
imply that you were already gold and you simply
Bingo.
need to stay that way. Okay.
You got to get gold
This
first. You got to
this is
get
what
gold to stay gold.
stay gold, pony boy. I think maybe that's the new title of this podcast.
There you go.
Um, well, that's why I love doing this with you because that makes a lot of sense. And I always do. I always do tell lawyers like you may have bad facts in your argument that
Yeah.
don't necessarily jive, and you just need to wrap your arm around them and embrace them and try to diffuse them. And I guess
Yeah.
that's what
And
he's
I
doing.
think that's what he's trying to do here is just
Okay, Jack, you get a solid A in this
good.
indictment.
Oh,
You get a
good. I can't
solid,
believe I said
and
good.
you defended a
Yes, I know.
prosecutor.
Jesus.
Let
And
it go
Trump.
down on the record in history. Oh my goodness.
I need a
Well,
drink now for sure.
may I recommend Don Fulano, the official sponsor of today's podcast. Also, Spindrift, lest anyone think I was solely just drinking alcohol, I am drinking a lovely Spindrift sparkling water, lemon flavored, to balance out the beautiful, amazing flavor of my Don Fulano and Yeho. But anyway, I think we could probably talk more about this, but I think we'll wrap it up so I can get this thing out and maybe
Yeah.
launched as a bonus episode. And stay tuned for the
Well,
next
so
one, which will
let's
be
just leave.
Hunter.
Okay,
Oh
let's
yeah,
leave your listeners and viewers just with where I think this
More
is going to
hope or
go.
more dread?
Well, I dread for Trump, and I
Okay,
mean, obviously, he's going to be convicted.
yeah.
Especially by a DC jury. There's just no doubt with the evidence, and as we all well know, all that has to happen is for him to be convicted of one count, and
Well, he has to
everything
get to
else comes in.
trial first, but
Well, yeah, he has to get to trial, but yeah, I firmly believe that
yes,
statistically speaking,
most
as we
people who
know,
go to trial get convicted. Yes,
over 85% of the people that go to trial federally are convicted.
yes,
And of the rest, most of the rest are, they're still convicted of at least one count. There's less than, I think it's like 1.4% are fully acquitted. No
yeah,
mistrial or anything,
yeah,
fully acquitted. Only
yeah.
1.4%. So statistically speaking, he will be convicted. So short of that, his best his best hope is that he's convicted on only a single count, which would be the first one, that conspiracy to defraud the United States, because that only carries a 5-year stat max. So no matter if his guidelines are through the roof like they are right now, the
And
judge
then
can't
he
give
has
him more than
acquitted
5 years.
conduct arguments to raise later on when they hammer him
Oh
at
yeah, and then
sentencing.
he certainly would have acquitted conduct, and I think this is a great case, by the way, for uncharged conduct, because
Yeah.
to use the term that I learned at the commission, there is a shitload of uncharged conduct in
Yeah.
here,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
yeah.
It's
So
everywhere.
yeah, it's
That's
everywhere, and
it's
that's really
all
what's
over
driving
this. Yeah.
that's what's driving his sentence, is all
Yeah.
of this uncharged conduct. So at
Yeah.
any rate, where I think it's going to come down in terms of the sentence is he's going to get around 6 to 7 years. That's what my
Oh,
statistical
we're making a
analysis and
prediction.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I'm making a prediction of six,
Y'all
six
heard
to
it here
seven years,
first.
which is still over a his life expectancy. It's yes, it's a lot less than some of the other J6 defendants like Stuart
Uh-huh.
Rhodes. I think though what is going to happen is there's going to be a lot of mitigation that's going to allow his sentence to get down that low, and primarily, frankly, it's going to be his health, his psychological issues. We're going to learn a lot about him, and his
Oh,
drug
no
drug
way.
addiction. Yes,
No way. He'll
yes.
never let a lawyer talk about that stuff at sentencing.
Oh,
It
I think
should
at
be
the
that way, but it won't be. There's no way he's going to let the American people say to his great followers, "You should take some mercy on me because I'm a mentally ill drug addict." Not going to
okay,
happen.
forget what I said then. 10 years. If
I mean,
that
the
if
judge
he
could
doesn't
read
play
between the lines
right,
because it's
if he doesn't
yeah.
play that card, if he doesn't play that card, and he wants to go in, if he wants to go out kicking and screaming like Stuart Rhodes did, then he's looking at around 10 years.
Plus, he won't ever express any remorse
True.
whatsoever.
No, he will
I
not.
mean, in an
That's without a
ideal
doubt.
world, I could tell a story to say, grew up my whole life with an abusive father who told me
Yeah.
I wouldn't amount to anything. I never felt good enough. I never felt like anything I did was enough. And of course,
Yeah.
bravado and exaggeration and lies and
Yeah.
everything else was that. And when I don't handle loss very well, you know that. And when I understood I lost the election, I really this thing in my brain took over that I was going to do everything in my power to not be a loser. Because my
Yeah.
whole life I've been told, don't
Yeah.
be a loser and this and that. And I'm so goddamn sorry that I wish I could do things differently. That is
Boy,
never going to
what an
happen.
awesome. But you know what? That
Never
would
going
be
to happen. But never in a
yeah,
million
never going to
years
happen, but
he is
holy shit, that would
constitutionally
be
incapable of that amount of self-reflection or truthiness
but
to
he
be
could,
able to
you
tell
know,
that
but
story.
he could end up having a Scrooge moment.
This is
Yeah,
where your half full glass is just
the
no,
ghost
no.
of federal sentencing could come visit him,
um
and he might have a change of heart.
yeah, I'm pretty sure that I'd be willing to put some money on that. And the
Yeah,
last thing I can
Ebenezer Trump, who knows?
oh boy. Well, the
Yep.
last thing I can say about this indictment, shout out to Arizona, my home state. Page 10 of 45. We're part of this false elector scam.
Oh
And
God, yeah.
Michigan has filed charges against these false electors. So
Oh, right. Yeah.
I'm wondering, Attorney General Chris
Yeah.
Mayes, is it time? Do we need to follow Michigan's suit and to line up some indictments here in Arizona? Because it sounds like from this indictment that's probably needs to happen, but
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yep. Seven
Anyway,
states. Wow, that's
elections have consequences.
yes.
We could have had a crazy Republican attorney general. The dude that ran for Secretary of State was the defeated, thank God, Mark Fincham, who was literally on the steps of the Capitol on 1/6.
Oh
And
God.
he would have been in charge of the elections in the state of Arizona. And this is a great shout out for Adrian Fontes, who did win the election, former defense lawyer, not a federal public defender, but a CJA lawyer,
Mm.
and just a incredible dude and fighter among fighters. Thank God he won. But elections have consequences. So
Yeah, they do. And that's what we're going to find out during this trial is how
oof,
crazy close we came to losing this. And
losing the
yeah,
whole
how crazy close we may come again.
right.
That's what's so frightening about this next election now.
Right. Right.
So
All right. Well, this was fun, man.
yeah,
I use the term fun loosely, but I'm always happy to hang with you and talk about this stuff. So we'll see you
great.
soon.
Very
Thank
good.
you, brother.
Okay. Thanks, Doug. Have
Bye.
a good night. Bye.
That's it for today, but before we go, I just wanted to take a moment and say thank you to you, the listener, for spending time with us today getting set for sentencing. Whether you're a lawyer, someone who could use the help, or maybe you're just a true crime buff who loves the inside scoop on how this whole thing works, I am so glad you're here, and I hope you keep listening. If you're interested in knowing more about what I do, mitigation videos, case consults, live teaching, on-demand educational content, books, articles, all of it, please visit www.dougpassonlaw.com. I'm Doug Passon. Until next time, hang in there. Wait a minute, that's a stupid way to sign off on a podcast about sentencing. Hang in there. What's the matter with you, man? I guess they call that gallows humor. Sorry. All right. Well, I will see you next time on Set for Sentencing. Bye-bye.